Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my own toss-up map. So Real Clear Politics, as you know, has their electoral college map. This will be my electoral college map. So it's not going to be an election prediction. It's going to be what I would characterize as safe states for respective Democrats and respective Trump states and Biden states, likely Biden and Trump states, lean, and we're going to leave tilt out and make that the toss-up category. But even though I would argue that states that would probably be lean states, I will put some of them in the toss-up category just for the sake of the fact that they will be competitive. In my mind, toss-up states, the margins, the polling margins or the overall characterizations is not going to have as big of an effect on my characterization as to whether or not they being a toss-up state or not, if that made any sense. Basically, toss-up states are going to be states that I perceive to be relatively competitive. So I'm not thinking about specific margins. I'm not thinking about, okay, do I think that both candidates, that will go under 5%, one candidate, the other will win by 5%. That's not what I'm thinking. I'm just thinking as to whether or not they are in any way competitive in a serious manner. All right, anyway, before I begin, I would just like to mention that, just give a little bit of context, in my opinion, going into this election prediction, is that 2024 is a very, very different election scene than 2020. 2020, we had COVID. 2020, we had racial riots. 2020, we had so many things going on. It was really hard to take the temperature in the room, in my mind. And that is why, for many people, the elections were not predicted correctly. Um, people over predicted Joe Biden. People had Joe Biden winning Texas, getting 400 plus electoral votes. I had Trump winning slightly. When it came down to margins, Trump was very close to winning. All he needed to win was a combined total of 45,000 votes to go the other direction in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia. That's beside the fact. But this, to get to a greater point, is that I believe that in 2024, this year, this election that will take place about 7 months from now, is going to be easier to take the temperature in the room. I think that the majority of Americans are dissatisfied with the way that the country is being run. Now, it doesn't. That's not going to influence my predict. I guess it'll influence my prediction, but it's not going to make me say who I think is going to win. But I do think that we have a better idea as to how this election will go down than, say, 2020 or 2016 for that matter. I don't think it's going to be as big of a shocker as those, I guess. It's going to be maybe like 22. I mean, going back when people kind of had good ideas in some sense as to who will win the election. Before I start this map, I just want to say this election could go either way. Now, I know that I have stated in the past, that I have posted on my community tab, that Donald Trump is the clear favorite to win the presidency. He's the front runner to win the presidency. He's leading in all of the states that he needs to surpass 270 electoral votes in the Electoral College and win the election. That does not mean that for any reason Joe Biden and the Democrats should be counted out of this election. They are still very capable. They're still very capable of winning in 2024. There is so much money that is going around, so many different things. Barack Obama is going to be campaigning for President Biden. Donald Trump has many different issues going on with him with regard to prosecution. If he's found guilty, a lot of Americans said that they would lose their support of Trump. Now, that could just be them saying that because of the way that the question is styled. Usually, it's that's not usually what happens. I don't really know how accurate that is. Anyway, this election could go either way. At the moment, Trump is the favorite, but Joe Biden is still very, very capable at mounting, I don't even know if you would even call it a comeback, a slight comeback, and winning the election. With that being said, let's begin with our safe Biden states. So I'm going to try and be as accurate as possible. I'm going to leave Oregon out of it because I don't think that Oregon is as solid blue state as California or any other state. So we're going to keep DC, Delaware. I'm going to pretty much do most of these northeastern states. I'm also going to leave New York out of it for the moment just because of the fact that Joe Biden has been leading by about 10 points in New York polls. That's pretty much a likely state. Now, at the end of the day, he could end up winning by 15 points, and then obviously that would be a safe state for him. But regardless, his popularity in New York has shrunk pretty significantly. We saw in the 2022 gubernatorial race, Kathy Hochul come relatively close being a Democrat running for governor in New York to losing to Lee Zeldin, 5 points pretty much. So I think the Democrats should be worried. And Schumer's margin, Chuck Schumer would win New York by 40, 50 points. He only won by about 20 points. And now Still a safe margin, but that has shrunk significantly compared to the previous times that he's ran for Senate in New York. So I do think that there is a little bit of a shift in New York. Obviously, still a Democrat state, but I'm going to leave it out of the solid category for now. Um, I'm going to leave Alaska out of this as well because Alaska was 10 points. Donald Trump only won by 10 points back in 2020. It has shifted a little bit to the Republican category. Um, Here we go throughout the rest. There you go. Here you have our, I would say, safe Republican states. You could argue potentially that South Carolina is a likely state, but Trump won it by by greater than 15, I believe, in 2020, and I do think that he would expand on that lead in 2024. Anyway, likely blue states. This is going to be Oregon. This will be New York, um, and this will be the state of Colorado. So those are going to be the likely Biden states, getting him to 191. Previously, you would say, this is not that good because the likely Biden states should include really New Mexico or Minnesota or, Maine at large. Anyway, likely Trump states. You have Alaska. You got Texas. You got Florida. You got Iowa. And frankly, you have Ohio as well. All of these states I do see being likely margins. Um, I just, I win Ohio. Iowa especially is going to be above double digits. Ohio will likely be a double digit victory. I'll leave Florida out of it for now. I think Texas is going to be double digits as well in 2024. So for that reason, they're all likely. They could in a very very landslide election scenario for Biden should go in his favor, but for the most part, they would be in Trump's category as likely states. Trump has pretty much solidified Iowa and Ohio when he's on the ballot, at least as Republican states. Now, Sherrod Brown, of course, is making it competitive in the Senate race. I do think that even Moreno with the scandals, if he's the Republican nominee, will ride Trump's coattails and win that race in 2024. But with that being said, whatever. Texas as well. Texas, since 2016, since 2012, people have been saying, "Oh, the Democrats are going to win Texas." It's a shifting state. It is shifting, and people are saying, people have been saying, a Democrat will win Texas very soon. Hasn't happened, and it's not going to probably happen in 2028. Who knows when it's going to happen? But frankly, Texas is not really a toss-up state either, and I think that people sometimes mischaracterize that because they get a little too excited about their perceived prospects for Texas. Anyway, New Hampshire will be a lean Biden state. Um, as well as the state of Virginia, as well as the state of New Mexico. I'm going to leave Nebraska's second congressional district out of that characterization for now. Lean Trump states. This will be the state of Florida. Florida, sorry, I forgot to include Maine second as a likely Trump state. Obviously, that will be a likely state or district. Florida, I took it out of the likely category. I'll put it in the lean column for now. I think that Trump is going to win Florida by a pretty substantial margin. Um, but I'll put it in lean for now. In addition, I'm also going to put Georgia in the lean category for now. Donald Trump has gotten Brian Kemp's endorsement. Brian Kemp has a 68% approval, and they previously had a lot of disagreements in politics in that state. But we've really seen Georgia in the last 2 years after Governor Kemp signed the voting bill into law and has made a lot of changes with regard to voting laws in Georgia. And as we can see reflected in the polls where Trump's leading by over 5%, Georgia, in my opinion, will be a lean Republican state at this point in this election. I just don't see President Biden having as great of a chance at winning the state of Georgia this time around. I'll give Biden Maine at large as a lean in his favor. I think that the one poll from Pan Atlantic is just not concrete enough to be considered definitive, and it's probably an outlier, but we will see as more polls come out of that state if it really is accurate or not. So the remaining states, in my mind, are toss-up states, and these consist of 88 electoral votes, obviously one district, and that is Nebraska's second congressional district. In 2024, Minnesota is going to be a toss-up state. What we've seen is that Biden has lost a lot of popularity among Muslim communities in his party, which we have witnessed in the uncommitted vote in primary elections. 100,000 people came out, I believe, in Michigan or Minnesota. I'm not entirely sure which state it was, to vote against Biden in the uncommitted category. That's not even voting for a candidate. It's getting out of your house and saying, I am so dissatisfied with my incumbent president, and that's a significant minority that could easily sway the state, that I'm going to go out and vote uncommitted in a primary election that Biden is obviously going to win. That takes such a level of spite and honestly just resentment towards the leader of their party, President Biden, that they would do that. And for that reason, Minnesota and Michigan, especially two somewhat dominated Muslim states at the moment. We saw that with Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, both being from those areas of the country, the Rust Belt areas. There is a Muslim community um, that has an impact in those areas, and they're very upset with the way that President Biden has handled the conflict in Israel and Gaza. And they believe that President Biden has not been stern enough in calling for a ceasefire, that he's been too pro Israel. But at the same time, while Biden is facing mounting pressure from Muslims in his party to call for a ceasefire in Israel, at the same time, he is facing continual pressure from Jewish donors in his party who are saying that they will strip funding of his campaign if he starts losing his pro Israel stance. So he is very much in a conflict at the moment in his party, and I don't really know how he can tie the two together and unify the party at the moment, given the current crisis in the Middle East. For that reason, Minnesota, as I said, is a toss-up state, as well as Michigan. Michigan at the moment, out of all of the Rust Belt states that have been polled, and take polling with a grain of salt right now, it doesn't matter at all. Like, polling does not matter at all. I mean, as I say, I like to look at the polls, and it's interesting, I guess, and it's people like to look at them, obviously, but it just doesn't matter that much. I mean, George H.W. Bush was losing to Michael Dukakis by 18 points a few weeks before the election. He ended up winning in a landslide. Nobody can tell, especially 7 months out, how things are going to go. But I'm going to talk about the polls now, so there's a little caveat. Michigan, out of all the Rust Belt states, is the one that's being polled most favorable for Donald Trump. And that is because many, people believe, many experts believe, the Muslim support for Joe Biden has frankly just plateaued. It has gone down. Um, and he's lost a lot of ground in Michigan. He's lost 5 points. There's been a 5 point shift. Uh, Biden won it by 2.5. Now Trump leads by about 3.5. So I guess a 6 point shift. So Biden should be very concerned with that. Michigan, of course, is a toss-up state. Pennsylvania is a toss-up state. Biden won it by about a point in 2020. Now we're in a very different environment where Biden is the incumbent, and people are very dissatisfied. He has an approval rating under 40%, the lowest of any president seeking re-election, I think, since Jimmy Carter. I don't even know if Jimmy Carter was this low. Um, he should be very worried about that as well. And Wisconsin, that's Trump's strongest Rust Belt state, in my opinion, not even Michigan. Wisconsin. Trump has performed the best in Wisconsin against Biden and Clinton in both elections. So Wisconsin, of course, will be a toss-up state. Nebraska second, I think, will narrow up. Biden did win it by a considerable margin in 2020, but he's lost some ground with suburban mothers. If he wants to make that up, he could win it by over 5 points, but we will have to wait and see, as we don't even really have much data coming out of there. I know did a whole ran against polling data, but there is no data out of Nebraska second, so it's purely hypothetical. Nevada and Arizona, both toss-up states in my mind at this point. You could argue that Nevada would even be a lean Republican state, but I can't bring myself to do that at this point, just because Nevada has been a Democrat state for a very long time. It's like North Carolina. North Carolina is a bellwether state. It's a toss-up. It's always close, and sometimes it does elect Democrats. But for the most part, on a general election level, national level, it elects the Republican nominee. Mitt Romney. North Carolina was the only toss-up state that Mitt Romney did win in 2012. Uh, Barack Obama won Ohio. So North Carolina is always close. It just has a high proportion of Democrats, Republicans. Similar thing with Nevada. I'm keeping Nevada in the toss-up category, as well as Arizona. Biden only won Arizona by less than 0.5% in 2020. And as I said, it is a different environment. We have to wait and see how the border issue is affecting Biden's popularity in Arizona as well. With regard to North Carolina was a close state in 2020. Trump still won North Carolina, but it was a very close state. With North Carolina, this would be the only state that I see Joe Biden possibly picking up at this point if he were to expand his lead from 2020. If Joe Biden was going to expand his lead from 2020, North Carolina is practically the only state I see him being able to flip at this point. I don't see him being able to flip Florida, and then it just gets very complicated after that. I mean, is he going to chip away Texas? I just don't think that's possible. Or Ohio and Iowa. Trump's going to win Ohio and Iowa. Very confident about that. And it's just, North Carolina is the only flippable state for Biden if that were to somehow happen this time around. But anyway, this is my 2024 electoral college map, similar to how RCP does it with my toss-up characterizations. I just use a third party to kind of highlight those toss-ups. But yeah, let me know in the comments your thoughts on my map. What would you keep the same? What would you change? Who do you think is going to win in 2024? Anything is possible at this point. Maybe Robert Kennedy, will be our president in less than a year. Who knows? I don't think so. But anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and have a great day. Talk to you all soon.